creating awareness about disabilities when society understands better, it takes that guesswork out. And when there isn't guesswork, it creates the inclusion.
Woo! Welcome one, welcome all. Speaker Vision Podcast, everyone. Thank you all so much for listening. I am your host, Tariq Williams, and you know what we do here. Not only I am Vision of Hope, but we are Vision of Hope. And we got a really neat episode for you all today. We're going to jump right into it, but I'm super excited. As you all know, I'm blind. And, I think that the world has a really interesting outlook on disabilities, and we're really going to dive into that today and understand some ins and outs about those conversations about individuals with disabilities and, misconceptions, things that should be happening, things that are not happening, etc. But done with the intro. Let's get into the episode. And I have an amazing guest with me today. We are so lucky and happy to have Gina Martin, founder of Diverse Abilities. Gina, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Tariq, for welcoming me. This is exciting.
Oh, it's super exciting.
Yeah.
I'm really happy to have you today, Gina. And I just know we're going to have so much value for the listeners today and talking about disabilities. And so let's jump right into it. All of our listeners, they know what I do here. Language is a really big deal to me. And we always start off with one word. So what's one word that describes why you wanted to do this work with individuals with disabilities? And then let's hear a little bit about your business.
Awareness. Creating awareness about disabilities when society understands better, it takes that guesswork out. And when there isn't guesswork, it creates the inclusion.
And Diverse Abilities, what is your business? What exactly is it that you do?
So with Diverse Abilities, we've spent a lot of time teaching people how to fit in who have disabilities with society. But until society really understands how to interact with people who are blind, how to communicate with people who are deaf or who have speech disabilities, that understand that most disabilities are non-apparent, that you can't see them, or understand what accessibility really is and what reasonable accommodation is, we'll never have inclusion. We're just going to continue to talk about it. So Diverse Abilities breaks through those barriers by educating society about our differences, because they're just differences. We just navigate life different. Doesn't mean we can't do things as we're living with disabilities. We just can't do them the same way as the able-bodied people.
Right. And I want to put this out there very quickly. So as all my listeners know, I'm a blind individual. I became blind at 16. And Gina, you're blind yourself. What is the cause of your blindness, if you want to explain your blindness to the audience?
Yeah, in 1992, I was diagnosed with progressive cone dystrophy. It's similar to macular degeneration. I have no central vision. I have less than 10% peripheral vision with blind spots and floaters. So that's where I'm at with my vision. I also have epilepsy and I have ADHD as well. So there's just a few things that I'm learning to navigate. I've just recently been diagnosed with the ADHD, which has really answered a lot of questions for me just in my life journey as to why I did things and do things the way I do.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So with all that being said, I think that the world view on disabilities, not in a lot of individuals don't always know what to think when it comes to individuals with disabilities. So what do you believe are some of the misconceptions about individuals with disabilities? Because you mentioned that word awareness. So let's talk about building that awareness. But what are some of the misconceptions that you find when it comes to individuals in society when it comes to disabilities?
I think that, if people don't know people with disabilities, we're all sort of categorized as one and not really recognized as individuals, because no two people, even if they have the same diagnosis, has the same support systems at home, work, school. We don't all have the same opportunities to purchase devices that make our life easier. We don't all have the, opportunity for rehabilitation and training, and we're all at different acceptances in our journey. So every individual, whether you have a disability or not, our strengths and stretches are different. We have, our abilities are different, our confidence, our preferences. And if society can recognize just that, is we are all individuals and we don't all need necessarily accommodations or the same accommodations.
Yeah.
And it's just being able to be comfortable and break down those barriers through communication is really going to be beneficial for our future.
For all of you listening at home, I want you all to know that this is our public service announcement to not put anybody and any disability, anybody for sure, but individual disabilities as well included in this. Don't put people in a specific box. Everybody is an individual, right, Gina?
Yeah, absolutely. We all do things a little bit different. And if ever you're curious about somebody, make sure you ask that individual, because their experience and what they need is unique to themselves. So, just gaining the confidence to directly speak to the person whom you maybe are curious about.
In my experience, I find that sometimes people are afraid to ask the question. Tariq, you're blind, so how do you even think about crossing the street? And they're afraid to ask the question. And what I tell people is that I prefer them ask the question versus not. And so then I could, once using your word, spread some awareness, right?
Absolutely. I think that, a lot of people are, uncomfortable because they don't know what to say or do. They don't want to offend, or they don't want to look stupid that they don't know what to say or do. So they avoid. Yeah. Also, us older folk were brought up, don't look, don't stare, don't ask questions. And so, we were kind of trained to avoid. And times have changed. We've come a long way over the last 30, 40 years when it comes to disability and technology and training and support and devices being created and, the internet. All of these things have really, changed how, those of us living with disabilities navigate life. And we're so much more independent than we were 30, 40 years ago. And so when people aren't integrated with people with disabilities, or maybe one type of disability, one person with one type of disability and not others, you aren't really aware of, what our abilities really are.
It's interesting that you said that's something that individuals have been raised to not ask questions. A couple episodes ago, I had communications coach Greg Cleaver on that podcast, and he mentioned that part of the issues with communication with the world today is that people aren't asking clarifying questions, and they're not being curious. But it's interesting to listen to you say this, because saying that it's something that how we've been raised to not be curious and not ask questions. And I think that our world would be, our world would be maybe at a more, actually, I should go back to your word, right? More aware of just life in general and individuals. If we just said, I don't mean to be disrespectful or anything, but can I ask you this question? And not afraid to be curious.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to bring in my presentations, Tariq. I like to engage my audience. And I like to bring a little bit of awareness to my audience that every single one of us has experienced a disability in our life. Whether we've broken an ankle, whether we've cut or burnt our hand, whether we've flown in a plane and couldn't hear, whether we've pulled a back muscle, had a migraine. All of these things prevented us from participating fully in life. And that's what a disability is. A disability prevents us from participating fully. Doesn't mean we can't participate. We just do it a little bit different.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you say that because I have a few blind clients that I work with as well. And I'm very adamant to talk with them about the fact that, hey, whatever disability you're going through, let's be sure that we recognize that your experience, once again, may be a bit different, but
Yeah.
it's not less than. Your worth is not calculated by how much you can see or not see. Your worth is not calculated by whatever disability you have going on. Your worth is not calculated by what the world thinks of you.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I'm really big on talking about what self-worth looks like because individuals so often think that their self-worth is calculated by social media. They think their self-worth is calculated by people who don't know them, strangers, even friends or family, but my worth is my own.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important that individuals with disabilities also recognize that because the outside world may not understand you,
Yeah.
that doesn't change your worth. Your worth is nothing short of amazing.
Yeah. When I'm talking to people about their particular temporary disability to help them try to understand better what we go through, I will ask the question of, while you were experiencing your temporary disability, did you feel like a different person, or was that task just a little bit harder?
Mhm.
During that time when you were experiencing that temporary disability, was it helpful when people were kind to you? If you had that broken ankle, was it helpful when people opened the door? Did you appreciate when people were kind to you during that time?
Mm.
Of course you do.
Yeah,
What did you
absolutely.
do? Did you use mobility devices? Did you cut or burnt your hand? Did you have to figure out how to use your other hand during that time?
Yeah.
Yeah. So those of us living with permanent disabilities are just like you. We feel the same way, only we
Mhm.
navigate life different. And it's harder for us every day, all day, but it is our normal. We've learned to adjust and adapt. We've figured out tools and devices that enhance our lives and make it easier. So, when you are thinking about disability, I also like my audience to think about, we are all going to be 80 years old one day. And when we hit 80 years old, every single one of us is going to need some assistance or some accommodation, because as we age, our abilities change. It's a natural process of life.
Mhm.
So if
Mhm.
we can break down some of these barriers as we age, our lives will become easier, because people will have a better understanding and more awareness of life is just different, but it's not over.
Mm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Gina, I love the passion in which you speak with. I look at passion very differently than other people because a lot of times people think like, oh, I have to go find my passion. And to some capacity, I think that is a thing, sure. But I think what gets missed there is putting passion into whatever it is you're doing, putting passion into the work and the way that you're speaking. And I could tell that this is something that you truly, really have a love for. So let me ask you, Gina, because and we're gonna pivot a little bit here because you were a waitress for a long time, and then you decided to pivot and creating your own business and working on building that. So can you explain to me what that transition has been like and what made you switch career paths?
Yeah. So for the first, we'll say, 24 years of my vision loss journey, I wandered around a sighted world pretending I was sighted, because I
Mm,
didn't want to draw attention to myself. I didn't want to use a cane. I didn't want people staring at me. I didn't want people accusing me of faking it because I had some sight. I wasn't connected with anybody in the blind community. So I just kind of went through life struggling every day without knowing how to advance. Um, and so in 2015, I met two women who were confident and blind, and it blew my mind. I had never experienced that before. And both of these women had attended the Louisiana Center for the Blind. It's a 9 month, training program that, you know, teaches you how to live your best life with no sight. And that training for me was probably the hardest thing I ever did in my life, but it taught me how to enjoy life to its fullest, only different than I did when I had sight. And so when I came back from my 9 months of training, I was inspired to start bringing awareness to society about vision loss, is mainly where I was kind of going to go with that. And it developed into working for getting a job opportunity with the Victoria Disability Resource Center that took me out of waitressing and brought me into the disability community and creating this awareness and building programs and educating society. And that's where my passion grew, because when people have little light bulbs that go off and be like, oh, I didn't know that. I went, wow, we can make a real difference for people with disabilities by just educating society. And that's how I developed and moved on into creating diverse abilities, because our abilities are all diverse. And some people who have disabilities don't identify as having a disability. It's just diverse abilities to me is we're just all different.
Let me ask you that question. You said a lot of great things there. Before I really go through your response there, you mentioned that a lot of individuals don't who may have a disability of some sort don't always identify as having a disability.
Yeah.
Why do you believe that is?
Um, some people don't want to, negative disability can sometimes have a negative connotation. Is that how
Yeah,
you say that? It's one of those words that's hard.
yeah, you got it. Connotation.
You
Absolutely,
know,
absolutely, yeah.
and so, or they just don't realize that, diabetes is a disability or a heart condition is a disability. It's an illness or, chronic pain. So they might not identify as a disability, but just their life is different than the majority.
The Louisiana Center for the Blind was a big part of my life as well. That's where we met, Gina, and we both were on our blindness journeys. And similar to you, I didn't want to be seen as, I didn't use a cane. I didn't want to. I'd pull it out of the closet, dust it off every now and then. But like you said, I didn't want to identify as a blind person because it I didn't know any other blind people, so I didn't want to come off as less than,
Yeah.
which, as I know now, couldn't be farther from the truth, but that was my self-internal belief. And so when it comes to those self-internal beliefs and how strong they are, um, you know, a quick short story. I had a situation where one of my friends told me that he was a loser. And I said to him, and I did a whole episode about this, but basically what came of that conversation was, I can't really tell you how to feel. 'Cause I was like, no, you're not a loser. But he doubled and tripled down because of what the world has told him, what other people around him have told him. And I said, if you say that you're a loser, I guess I can't really change that if you actually believe that. But what it looks like to feel empowered, to be empowered as an individual and what that looks like for you, and really understanding that your disability does not define who you are. And I'm not going to tell you that my blindness isn't a part of my life. It definitely has shaped different parts of my life. There's no doubt about it. But it doesn't define the person that I am. And I got to learn a lot of those lessons at Louisiana Center for the Blind, as well as just different conversations, and continue to learn more about myself every day.
Yeah, something I want to touch on is language. Like you just
Yes.
used the term loser and how we talk about ourselves, and that can really drag us down over time. And I want to share with you something from my own experience that has changed my life for the positive.
Okay.
And in my presentations, I talk about language as well. And I'm going to use the term visually impaired because it's the
Okay.
most common term out there that describes vision loss. We
Okay.
hear it all the time. And myself, for 27 years, I said, I'm visually impaired 5 to 20 times a day. Excuse me, I'm visually impaired. What bus is coming? Excuse me, I'm visually impaired. What does this say? How much is this? It's the way I introduced myself to every person I met.
Mm.
Then I say, what is the first thing you think of when you hear the word impaired? Maybe the first two or three things you think of when you hear the word impaired.
Gosh,
Mm,
broken.
yeah,
It don't work. It don't
yeah,
work. It needs fixing, Gina.
yeah. Drunk, there
Yeah,
isn't
yeah,
anything positive
yeah,
associated with that word.
yeah.
And it's, like I say, I used it and used it and used it. And when I decided to stop using the term visually impaired and started to say, I'm partially sighted, I have low vision, I'm experiencing vision loss, I'm legally blind, I started to feel better about myself.
Hmm.
Now, it took me probably a little longer than 6 months to break that habit because it is just a part of my dialogue. And it had been for so many years. But every time I said visually impaired, I stopped myself and go, low vision, partially sighted, legally blind. And my interactions with people afterwards actually became kinder.
So let's talk more about that. So you mentioned how you yourself, and using the word visually impaired, there was some internal, the connotations of the word impaired. When talking to other people or other interactions with individuals, did you ever feel like you've been marginalized or discriminated against because of your disabilities?
Oh yeah, absolutely. People, when they think of blindness, they think of darkness, and they think you can't do anything.
Mm.
So I myself even was a waitress for 28 years in one restaurant, and I was a darn good waitress. I have fun personality too. I had my regular clients. New owners took over, and I was
Mhm.
the only person not hired back on.
Wow. Okay.
So that there's that discrimination because it's the liability. Oh, if she drops something and hurts somebody, or the unsure or uncomfortableness of that new owner. And not being able to approach and discuss things with me. So yeah, I've had that experience myself, and I was blown away. I'm like, whoa, I'm one of your top servers, and they're like, oh, we just have enough staff. I'm like,
How
okay.
did that make you feel? How did you, so they said you haven't, it was clear because of your blindness, but how did you handle that? What was next?
Um, you know, I didn't have as much confidence as I do now.
Okay.
So, that's a little bit different. I would definitely handle it differently today than I did then. I just kind of okay, and moved
Wow.
on.
Wow.
But today I'd be like, let me show you what I can do. I circles around your other servers. I've been doing this a long time. So just my attitude and my confidence is so different after getting training that it wouldn't happen today. Let's put it that way.
The world continues to project. They want to project, right? Because they can't do something, they're
Yeah.
going to tell me that I can't. What are
Yeah.
we talking about here? Listen, because you can't start a podcast doesn't mean that I can't.
Yeah.
Because you can't start a business about empowering individuals with disabilities does not mean that I can't. Don't put your limiting belief on me. What are we talking about here?
Yeah.
I I don't know. I don't know why the world does that consistently. Uh, I have a lot of different thoughts. Maybe an episode for another time. But truly, the individuals try to put their lack of abilities on other people because they can't do it. They're gonna say that I can't, and I'm not. I'm not standing for it, Gina.
Well, when it comes to society understanding disabilities, you may meet one person who is blind, who isn't confident, or who doesn't have the same, abilities. And like I said at the beginning, you can't group us all under the same umbrella because no two people, disability or not, have the same confidence, abilities, preferences. We are all
Right.
individuals, and it's a matter of just connecting with each individual to finding out what their strengths and stretches are, because every single one of us has strengths and stretches in life. And yeah, if we can bring our stretches to the forefront as to how we can, empower and help business become more productive with our disability and our insight and our different, outside of the box thinking. When you're blind, you have to be an outside of the box thinker.
Yeah, yeah.
And that really can be beneficial when it comes to businesses and hiring. And what are you looking for within organizations? Because people with disabilities have a lot to bring to the table that maybe employers don't realize.
Well, what it sounds like to me, Gina, is that this previous employer, that they could have used your services to
Now
understand
they
a
can.
bit more about individuals with disabilities. So, uh, you mentioned presentations that you do, Gina. Tell me a bit more about your business specifically and the services you provide and where you're at.
Okay, now this is exciting because this is what I love doing. So I offer multiple programs. I'll start with my Youth Adapt
Mm.
program.
Well,
So
we love the kids.
love, you know what? Kids want to do good. They want to learn. They just need to
Mm.
be taught. And they love it. So I go into classrooms. I like classroom sizes. I bring hands on activities so that the kids get an opportunity to experience what some of their peers might be going through, whose body or brain works different in the classroom. And so when they get to have these experiences, and then afterwards, discussion around how did they feel during that? What are some things we could do differently? How could we be a support to somebody who is going through whatever it is that we're going, or whatever it is that they're going through? Really helps to create that inclusion and that awareness. So I do talk about all different disabilities, both apparent, non-apparent. I talk about language. I talk about what accessibility is, that it's more than a parking spot, a bathroom, and a ramp, so that when
Ooh,
they start creating their inventions and their products and their
yes.
websites, that they build it accessible from the beginning so that when they hit 80 years old, they can still use it.
Yeah.
So that they can sell it to everybody, because everybody will be able to use it. And just creating the dialogue around how to be respectful to people who navigate life different, how to offer their assistance, and how to be supportive. So that's my youth program.
Real quick, I have to say, Gina, you said something there, and I really need to I just have to dive in here for a moment. Accessibility is not just a parking spot or a ramp.
Yeah.
You know, I think that individuals see these parking spots like, oh, okay, that's here for people. Like, but understanding accessibility is way more than a parking spot or a ramp. I just that's a quote right there. Continue.
Yeah.
Tell us more about the programs.
Yeah, so that's my youth program. My seniors adapt program. So, like I said earlier, as we age, our abilities change. It's a natural process of life. Every single one of us is on a different acceptance journey.
Mm,
And so,
mhm.
when I go into retirement communities and community centers, I bring a suitcase full of tools and devices that can make life easier for people. Sometimes we don't know what's out there. We don't know what they're called. We don't know where to get it. And I like to share that life is no longer the same as it was when you had all of your abilities, but it's not over. You can do things. You're just going to have to do them a little bit differently. And sometimes it's learning new techniques. Sometimes it's using some tools or devices that make your life easier. And it's also getting connected with people who are going through the same thing, because that's who we learn from, are people that are navigating those situations and have found the tricks and tips that make their life easier. It doesn't mean it's going to make your life easier, but it's another option to learn about. And if it doesn't help you, it might help somebody that you know now or will later. Because, like I said,
Mhm.
as we're 80, our abilities are going to change, and we're going to know people going through some of the things that I share in the seniors program. And
You
I
know,
also,
Gina, I have to say this, Gina. I'm not 80, but my knees, Gina.
yeah, I hear you, Tariq.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
With the seniors program, I also help bring us some of the awareness that I teach in my staff program on the best practices for interacting with people with disabilities. And
Mm,
so that helps to create the inclusion in the retirement communities.
mhm.
So that's my seniors program. And my community program is just, for anybody who wants to learn about disability. And then my ideal team building program is my staff program. And ideal stands for inclusion, diversity, equity, accessibility, and language.
Love it.
And I believe that when society has the fundamental understanding of these concepts, we can start breaking through the barriers that prevent us from participating fully. Because when people know what to say and do, it takes that guesswork out and it will create that inclusion. And our differences will become known as just that, differences.
That's amazing work. That is amazing work. I think one of my biggest, I want to say, issues when I was becoming blind is that I felt alone and I felt that no one really understood what I was going through. And when
Mhm.
you mentioned that community program, I really wish that there was something like this that was more prominent in our world today that made sure that people understood
Tariq,
disability. Yeah.
yeah, Tariq, what I really feel is if you serve the public, you should have people skills training.
Mm.
If you serve food, you need food safe. If you serve alcohol, you need serving it right certificates.
Yeah.
If you serve people, you need people skills
Yeah.
training or disability training, or I say people skills because, right, I do talk about disability. Obviously, that's my lived experience and what I'm passionate about. But
Mhm.
inclusion is more just about than just disability. It's about gender, it's about everything, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's
Yes.
why I say people skills training. If you're on the front line or you are an employer, this should be something that becomes mandatory in how I look at the future being different.
It's so interesting. Gina, you're so right. I mean, if you want to work with food and beverage, you need a food safe, right? You need that certificate. You need all these different things. But when it comes to working with people, there's no real standard. Um, and I think that's a part of the issue with not just interactions with people with disabilities, but people in general and communication and what it looks like to really connect with someone. And ultimately, when you're talking about all your programs, I think the most amazing thing that's happening here is that we're meeting people where they're at.
Yeah.
You know, I if you think that life or interacting with any one person is a one size fits all situation, that is a one-way ticket. You have just bought your Amtrak, your transportation ticket to not being able to connect with that person if you think it's one size fits all, because it's just not going to work that way.
Yeah.
You really have to meet people where they're at, and with the work that you're doing, that's incredible, Gina.
Yeah. Thanks, Tariq. I really do love it. I'd love to share a few of the tips that I share with all of my audiences, whether it's youth, seniors, businesses,
Yes,
for communicating with people who are blind or legally blind, because that's
please,
my lived
because
experience.
please,
So
please, because when it comes to the world today, I think that so often we don't we I think some tips and some strategies and how to connect with people just in general will be really helpful and give some great value. Not only that, I think that the world needs to know. Like you said, the world needs to know. So yeah, please.
yeah, and when you say the world needs to know, it's even those of us with disabilities. We're all experts in our own disability, but it doesn't mean we know about everything to do with all the different disabilities. So we all as a society need to learn about each other as individuals.
But Gina, I became blind at 16, right? I didn't automatically think life was going to be cool. You know what I mean? I thought my life was over. I thought the sacrifices friends and family had made for me were null and void at this point. I had no belief in what I could possibly do. And so, and quite frankly, the people around me didn't know much about people with disabilities, once again. And so they weren't sure either. So we were all just faking it till we made it. But we, I would say some individuals around me weren't sure what was possible. And so, as a blind person myself, I didn't believe either. I did not wake up one morning, become blind, and ultimately and just believe in myself because I didn't. So yeah,
It
please,
takes
Gina.
time. So something that I'll start out my presentation, or not presentation, but this kind of section being, okay, I would like everybody to envision a very foggy day where you can
Mm,
see the shadows of a person, but you can't see their intentions.
mm,
Because the majority of us have some vision. It's not always useful or reliable. Only about 15% of us are totally blind and see nothing. So I want you to envision the foggy day and the shadows. Often people are quiet around those of us who are blind. Maybe they don't know what to say or do. They don't know how to offer their assistance. They don't want to bother us because they don't know if we're focusing or concentrating. I don't know what their reasons are, but a lot of time people are quiet. They move out of the way. They don't say anything. And that is not helpful for those of us who don't see. What is helpful is to say hello. When
yeah.
you say hello, some really great things happen. For one, I know you're there, so when I'm swinging my cane, I don't trip you. Two, I know you're there. If I needed a question answered or, some help of any kind, I could ask you. You just said hello to me, so you didn't insinuate I needed help by asking me. So therefore, you just treated me like everybody else. Those of us who don't have much vision or any vision at all, we don't see your smiles, your nods, your friendly gestures that sighted people give each other all the time.
Yeah.
So when you say hello to us, we take it as that smile, that nod, that friendly gesture, and we appreciate that you are, acknowledging and saying hi. Are you going to garner an unfriendly response from somebody who's blind that you say hi to? Absolutely, you are going to. Do you garner an unfriendly response from somebody you pass on the street and say hello to? Absolutely, you do. We don't know what's going on in each other's lives. Maybe the person using the cane is new to navigating with a cane, new to vision loss. Maybe they've got a lot on their mind. Maybe they're in a hurry. We don't know. But by just saying hello, you did your part as a human being in being kind to somebody. How they react is not your problem.
Yeah.
Um, if you know my name, please use it. Please say hi, Gina. When you say hi, Gina, I know you're talking to me.
Yeah.
I can't always know who's talking to me. And I'll ask everybody, close your eyes, everybody in the room. I am going to talk to one of you. Who am I talking to right now?
Yeah.
So use my name. Say hi, Gina. If you say, hi, Gina, it's Tariq, I then know who I'm talking to because
Yeah.
I, can't always identify people by voice alone, especially if there's surrounding noises. I'm meeting them outside of a place I normally see them. I can't always identify the voice. Even if I know the person well, sometimes it can be difficult. So,
Yeah.
hi, Gina, it's Tariq is so helpful. If
Yeah.
somebody comes into your restaurant or your store regularly and they have a guide dog or they're using a cane, get to know our name. It is helpful.
Hmm. The first part of what you were saying, I follow this girl. And I won't use her full name, but because we're barely acquaintances, but I follow her on social media. Her name's Sarah, and she is big on disability awareness. And it's really funny. She has this one thing she posted, I think, on Instagram or Facebook somewhere, and she was talking about an interaction that she may have with someone in the public. And they see her cane, and they go up to her and they see her and they say, "Are you blind?" And her
Sorry.
response was, "Yes. And I can hear you just fine."
Oh, That happens a lot. Being grabbed happens a lot.
Yeah.
You know, it's, yeah, it can be super frustrating.
Mhm.
Uh, I tried to bring awareness around, don't ever grab us. That can be really startling. Again, go back to envisioning, the cloudy day and not seeing somebody's intentions and being grabbed. It can be very frightening. The grabbing itself could harm us. As you grab us and try and help us across the street, it takes away our ability to effectively use our cane, our orientation. All of those things are impacted when somebody in the able-bodied community is trying to do a good deed at what they think is a good deed.
Mhm.
But it is so important. The two sentences I say in all my programs is, first, ask anybody if they would like help. If they say no, don't get offended. I get people that throw their arms up in the air going, I was just trying to help. And I'm like, but I didn't ask for your help.
Right.
First, always ask somebody if they'd like help first. And if they say yes, your second question needs to be, how would you like me to help you?
Mhm.
And if you
Mhm.
can remember those two sentences when interacting with anybody, you are treating people with dignity and respect.
What you're saying right now, Gina, is should not be earth shattering. Even though it may be, but it shouldn't be.
Yeah,
And on top of that, I would say that this isn't even disability specific. It's just people specific.
yeah, yeah. Those two questions. Would you like some help? And how can I help? And if you're somebody, and you see somebody walking and maybe they're walking up to an intersection and you're concerned for their safety, yelling watch out and look out is not helpful. We don't know what to be watching out and looking out for. Grabbing us is not helpful. But what is helpful is saying, lady with the white cane, stop, electric bike on your left. You've identified it's me. You've told me what to do, and you've
Mhm.
told me why, and you've said 5 words more than stop, look out, watch out. It's only 5 more words, but you've given me clear instruction as to what to do and why.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's that awareness piece that you started off with, right? Just that awareness. I think these conversations are so important because people, you know, people. It's people, right? Um, like you said, there are so many I mean, this isn't just exclusive to just blindness once again, because people are people. You don't know what someone is going through. So the least we can all do as a people is treat people with respect and what it looks like to have a conversation. Because you start treating people with respect, having conversations, and be asking the question, that's only going to build up our world and
Yeah.
build up our communication skills as individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the things that I might also say in my presentations is, sometimes interacting with people with disabilities might be uncomfortable. And so sometimes you don't know what to say. And often the first thing people say is, oh, how did you go blind? Or what happened to you? And I say, don't ask those questions.
Hmm.
Those
Mhm.
are personal questions that could trigger PTSD for somebody.
Mm.
What if my mom gouged my eyes out with a fork?
Mm.
Do you really care about how I went blind? Or are you just uncomfortable in needing a question to ask?
Mm.
The
Mm.
question I say to ask is, how are you finding accessibility today? Where are the barriers that we still need to work on? Then you're
Yeah.
going to have a meaningful conversation with somebody. When you ask a personal question as to what happened to you, or, you're probably going to garner a response where it's none of your business.
Mhm.
You've then triggered me. I'm going on with my day now, upset and depressed, or however it is that question has affected me, and you never think of me again.
Mhm.
So, there's words and phrases and sentences that we can use when meeting people. Don't dig into somebody's personal business the first time you meet them or right off the bat. dig into something that's meaningful, like a conversation about accessibility, or ask us what we enjoy doing. The
Get to
same as you
know
would
me.
anybody
Get
else.
to
Get
know
to know.
me.
Exactly.
Get to know me. I am way more than just my disability,
Yeah.
you know? Way more than just my disability. I also have a cool sense of style. I'm wearing a pretty cool jacket right now.
Not.
um, I'm way more now. Once
Yeah.
again, my disability definitely has shaped some of my personality. There's no doubt about it. Um, I became blind once again at 16, and I think when you become blind at an age like that, for me personally, it really helped me to understand all the things in life that I was taking for granted. The way food was being put on my table as a kid, the way that I had clothes to wear, shoes, video games, etc. It really made me take a step back and say, okay, wow, I didn't have to have these things, but I do. Once again, you might have thought that I forgot. You might, by listening to that description, you might have forgotten that I was talking about learning that from my blindness. But once again, that doesn't define me, but it has shaped some of my thought process. And don't define me by what I can't do or what you think I can't do.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what I enjoy doing, and I enjoy, sharing as well, is, I do things differently. I'll use an example of, envision a big pink hydrangea bush. You may
Mhm.
look at it with your sight, people who are vision, who are able bodied. I go up to that bush. I feel how big it is with my arms. I touch the petals. I smell the flowers. I hear the bees. And then I say to whomever, why don't you join me in a different experience? And use some of your other senses. You walk through the forest, touch the trees, smell the bark, feel the flowers.
Yeah,
Have a different experience.
yeah.
Experience it like I do, and you're going to end up enjoying more of life.
Gina, I'll tell you right now, I cannot see the giant M at McDonald's.
Yeah.
However, come, but you best believe I can smell those French fries.
In training, I always knew if I was near the interstate or on California, because those are the two places that had all the fast food.
There you go. That yeah, for sure. California Street right there over in Ruston, Louisiana. There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Oh gosh. Gina, this has been such a great conversation, but if we could once again, I'm gonna go back to that language piece, the last letter L for ideal. Um, that language, once again. One word that you really want to make sure if you weren't taking notes, listeners, which we knew they all were, Gina. But for those who may not have been taking notes, what's one word you want to make sure the audience understands about disabilities, about people? What do you want to make sure that we understand today? One word.
We're unique.
Mhm.
Every individual on this planet is unique and different from everyone else.
Don't put me in your box. Don't put me in your box. All right.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right. Because you didn't think that we were going to talk about McDonald's French fries today when we were talking about disabilities, but we did. But because you tried to put me in that box, and I said, nah, we're not doing that. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you, Gina. I think that when it comes to communication, when it comes to people, when it comes to individuals with disabilities,
Yeah.
just my brother would say something to me sometimes when I was a lot younger. When I was a lot younger, and I was being silly, right? Maybe I was probably a teenager or whatever, and I would do something silly. I can't think of what that might be. And he would be like, Tariq, act like a person. And I would think that was so funny, right? Like, I was like, all right, I knew what he meant by it, right? But I just always thought that was so funny. But ultimately, this conversation isn't even necessarily exclusive to people with disabilities. It's about people.
Yeah. I touched on earlier, accessibility is more than a parking spot, a bathroom, and a ramp.
Yes.
So I want to just touch on a tiny little bit more, a little further about accessibility and accommodations, if that's okay, Tariq,
Please, please.
because it's
Yes.
really important, right? It's lighting, it's noise, it's so many different things. Accessibility. In my ideal team building, I assess a business prior to going in, and then I bring the tools and devices with me that create more accommodation, more accessibility for that particular business. So I'm going to use a clothing store as an example. So if a clothing store had a long handled shoehorn, a dressing stick, a zipper pull, a button hook, uh, you know, as something that a person may use to take into the changing room to try on clothes, creates that accessibility and accommodation. Often people who have mobility disabilities and need to use these devices don't always carry all of that around with them,
Hmm.
or spontaneously they want to go shopping with a girlfriend or a friend. So often people go into a store, they pick clothes, they go home, they try them on, they don't fit, they go back, they return them. If you had these little tools, which would be around $100 Canadian, so only about $70 American, had these tools for such a minimal price, you are creating that accommodation and accessibility in your business
Yeah.
for people who navigate life different. Whether it's a permanent disability or somebody's broken their ankle or they've hurt their shoulder, you then have these tools that create more accommodation. Or an example, a car dealership, there's a swivel cushion you can sit on that helps you to swivel around, or if you have a chair with no arms.
Hmm.
There's a handy bar handle that goes in the door that creates an extra handle to help you getting in and out. There's so many things out there that create that accessibility and accommodation that people don't think about. But when you provide this, it's again dignity and respect. People talk. Everybody
Yeah.
knows somebody with a disability. Oh,
Yeah.
that business over there has gone over and above to create that inclusion and that accessibility. Like I say, it's more than a parking spot, a bathroom, and a ramp. There are tons of things that can make your business or your community more accessible.
And to be clear, with your work, Gina, you go to schools and work on empowering kids and what that looks like, as well as work and go into employers and businesses so that everybody has this awareness about working with people with disabilities. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is.
Amazing.
And I love it.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
Um, we gotta, I'm not I don't know too much about innovating technology, but if we could clone Eugenia, and to have a lot more of this in our society. I think that just the importance of inclusion and really accepting people for where they are, um, we really can make this world a better place. So, to
Well,
from
that's great.
from all our listeners, and especially from me, I want to tell you thank you.
Thanks, Tariq. I do offer my training now online.
Okay.
So I do in-person training where I feel that's really powerful because they get the hands-on.
Hmm.
But if you are a business that's out there that would like your team to have these concepts, I'm able to provide online training as well so that this message gets out there so that people can ask me the questions, can get involved. Even though it's online, it's still that training that will benefit everyone.
And if you're not too sure what that looks like for your business, I definitely recommend, getting in contact with Gina for sure in terms of having this understanding. And my big thing, and recently come out, actually just came out yesterday, um, my self-prioritization, the Prioritize You workbook, where we're talking about what it looks like to prioritize you and ultimately being able to, be able to empower others and be a better light for that world around you, but the importance of priorities excuse me, the importance of recognizing where your priorities are as a business, as an individual, and what it looks like to level up in your life. And so, with that program, Gina, that sounds amazing. And I think it's really important as a person that we really work on what it looks like to put our priorities in a place where we can be who we were meant to be.
Yeah. Cool.
Gina,
Thanks.
thank you
Teresa.
so much for being here, Gina. I think this has been amazing, some great value. And I think that some people who are listening here today are really gonna not only think about how they interact with people with disabilities, but how they interact with people just in general.
Nice. Perfect. My website is diversabilities.ca for Canada. If anybody is interested in reading more about what I do, what I offer, and I do have a Facebook page, Diversabilities, and I'm on LinkedIn. If you want to follow me, I share helpful tips and all of that on my social media. I write blogs, and all of the information I collect are from people with lived experience. They're not just my own views and thoughts. I reach out to the communities. I find out where the barriers are, what needs to be broken down, and that's the information I deliver to the community. So it is the lived experience from the majority. Of course, we are all different. We can't please everybody,
Right.
but I try to teach the respectful ways until somebody you meet tells you different.
And we will make sure that all of Gina's information, website, LinkedIn, all those things is in the description below, so you can learn more about her business and all the great things you're doing, Gina. So amazing,
Yeah, thanks,
amazing.
Tariq. This ended up being a lot of fun. I was a little bit nervous at the beginning, um, but you made this really easy and comfortable, Tariq, and I want to thank you for that. And that comes across in your speaking, in your podcast, in your vision of just uplifting and real, and it's nice. Thank you.
This is a space for everything empowerment, but it's also a space of education and being comfortable and recognizing that as a people, there's truly nothing that we can't do. So Gina, you were amazing to have. It was the pleasure was all ours, and the listeners I know will love it. So Gina, thank you so much for being here. And I look forward, and as all of us do, look forward to the amazing work that you continue doing and all the great things you do in the future. So thank you so much, Gina.
Great. Thanks, Tariq.
Once again, everyone, thank you all for listening to the Speak Your Vision podcast. Not only I am Vision of Hope, but we are Vision of Hope. Have a great one, everyone.